listening to the Align and Inspire podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Minique, and in this episode, I have one of my previous clients and lovely friends, Nicole Cruz, on the podcast, and we are going to talk all about how creating a signature process can actually help you not only get better client results, but also help you feel more confident in making more sales. So, Nicole, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you. So excited to be here.
Yeah. So I would love to hear, maybe just introduce yourself so the folks know listening who you are and who you help.
Yeah, for sure. So, like I said, I'm Nicole Cruz. I am a registered dietitian and parent nutrition coach. And I tend to help parents of 2 to 12-year-olds raise their kids to have a healthy relationship with food and to get the nutrients they need to grow and thrive and feel good in their body.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, it's such important work. And I don't know about you if you notice this, but I think anytime you introduce yourself, a lot of parents are like, oh, I need this. So yeah, how did you get started in the whole field and doing what you're doing now?
Yeah, so when I was in my teens and early 20s, I struggled with food myself and ended up leaving college to go get treatment for my eating disorder. And through that process, I worked with a dietitian and therapist and just found that I actually could be at peace with food and have freedom with food, which I didn't realize after struggling for so long. And so through that work, I decided I really wanted to help people in the same way that my treatment team had helped me. And I just felt like so many people were living with this struggle, even if it's not a full-blown eating disorder, just with so much tension around food in their body and not trusting themselves with food and going on and off of diets and all sorts of things. And so I just wanted people to have that freedom and peace with food that I had found. And so I started working with clients. I went to a treatment center and worked there for a while, then opened my own private practice. And after a little while, I had my own kids. I now have 3 kids myself. And I just found being around parents that I was seeing so many parents who were so conscious and loving and wanting the very best for their kids. And they were really struggling with how to feed them and doing things that I knew were planting the seeds for potentially creating like bigger issues, maybe disordered eating later in life, or that were just exacerbating the problem then and making feeding their kids really stressful and making food unenjoyable and meals unenjoyable. And so I really wanted to lean into helping parents more with creating more joy, less stress with food, and also to still help their kids get the nutrients they need and to have that overall healthy relationship with food long term.
Love that. Yeah, it is so necessary. And since learning a lot from you around having a healthy relationship with food and the way to speak about food, I've really learned so much just around, like, there are a lot of things that are just common narratives, I think, in the way that we speak about food that you don't realize can actually be hurting you, or even not hurting you, but hurting your child, or even just kind of getting in the way of your actual goal. Like for me, like I want my kids to be balanced eaters. I want them to be able to go out for dinner and things like that. And you don't know what you might be doing wrong or what could be getting in the way. So yeah, your work is so important.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I see that so often, just like the dynamics that parents don't even realize that they're kind of caught up in. And sometimes it's just little tweaks. And obviously, sometimes there's like more things that we want to overhaul, but it's really amazing work actually to see parents just make little shifts and feel such a huge difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I really enjoyed working with you. It was so fantastic. I love your mission. That is so important to me, is to work with people that I just love a ripple effect of when I can help people in like the way that I'm most equipped to help people with around their process, around their signature process and all that stuff. And then you can go out and help more parents. I just love the ripple effect. So where were you when you started working with me? Like where were you at then and what's kind of changed since then?
So a lot. So I started working with you. I don't know if you fully remember, but I started working with you because I just felt like all out of sorts in my business. Like I had so many different things going and I just felt like I was constantly trying to like keep up and things felt chaotic and I felt like I didn't have any like structure or systems within my business. And meanwhile, I wanted to really be up leveling my program and all of these things. And so I just felt like all over the place. And so initially we started working just on like helping me with my day to day and how I could get more systems in place so that I could actually do the work that I really wanted to do and that would be more impactful, and like figure out what I could take off my plate or how I could systematize it or how I could just arrange my weeks and my days better and have more of an overall plan, because I felt like I was always reacting. Like every day I was just reacting to whatever was coming to me instead of being able to really be intentional about the things that I wanted to work on. So we started there. And once I created a little bit more space in my business, I was like, oh my gosh, I really can work on my program now because I have space to do that. And I remember telling you that, and you were like, well, I can totally help you with that. I was like, oh, I thought you were just helping me like figure out my life here, my whole life. I thought you were helping me figure out my life, but no. So then we really started working on my program, which was amazing, because I learned so much from you around how I could create better systems in my business. That actually, like, the thing that you do so well is figure out how I can do this in a way that's going to support my client, but that actually also works for my business in the way that I want to run my business and my life in general. Like, if I don't want to be showing up at these hours inside my business, even if that would be helpful for my client, then how do we figure that out different so that I can still be supporting them at the highest level, but that works for me, which I was really missing a lot of. Like, I'm just someone who, I love the work I do. Plus I want to support everybody. And so I can just get very involved in like, if that's what they need, then let me figure out how to do that. But sometimes it's not actually making their experience better. So I really learned from you how I could also set up systems that would help me help them and work in my life as well. And just organize my program in a way that helped all sorts of people get really good results. I think when I started, I was trying to reorganize my program and I felt a little bit like, I do really good work coaching one-to-one, but I'm not sure if I can put this into like a flow. Like, I'm good at showing up with someone and helping them with where they're at, but how do I actually put this into a program that's still going to get people results if I'm not just like there to answer at the moment versus them going through it? I don't know if that makes a lot of, if I'm articulating
Yeah,
that.
it totally does. And just so for context for you listening, so at the time, Nicole, you had your group program and you were also doing one-to-ones, right? So before that, you were working just one-to-one. And then when we started working together, you already had your program that you run on an reasonably evergreen basis, I would say. So you can maybe let us know a little bit about your program in a moment. And so you had one-to-ones and you had your group program, and we looked at systematizing your business, which we can get into a little bit as well. But especially we looked at how to actually create the process for your clients, because one of the things that I've heard too is I think we have this, and maybe you have this if you're listening, sometimes we have this idea that it's A or B, that either I can support my clients or I can have a business that works for me. But if I create a business that's going to work for me, it's not necessarily going to help my clients at the highest level. But really, it's A, B, C, D, E, F. Like, there's lots of other options. And it's about how can you marry the two of creating the business that supports you and your family and what you want to be able to create and helps your clients too. But sometimes you have to think a little bit outside the box so that it's both parties involved feel good in the relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like what kind of happened for me was because I had done so much one-to-one work for so long, that's like the model that I knew. So when I put together my program, it was still highly based on the group calls. Like, I felt like, okay, I do have, like, I would do trainings and I had some material there for them to go through, but I still felt like this works because they can come to the calls and I can coach them. I didn't feel like my material was streamlined well to really help them get results without being on the group call, where now I love group calls. Like, personally, that's where my heart is getting to connect with people. So I love that. But people can go through my program and get great results without having to have that, because now it's really systematized because of the way that you helped me like organize it all within there and make it flow together and is like a curriculum in a way, but that really is also trying to think of the word I'm looking for, but is like concise in what they need, versus just like trying to throw everything in there. It
Mhm.
really helped me to figure out like what are the things that they actually need to go through um, to get the results, to get to the place they want to be.
Yeah, I think that is so important and not something that we always think about with group coaching is having like that structured core content or curriculum behind the scenes. So then the goal for me is yes, you can provide more support in group coaching or one on ones or in different strategies. I call them implementation strategies, but you also don't want to have to always be on in order to help your clients get a result. So, or help them achieve that transformation. So, the more tools that you can give them, the more likely they're going to be able to actually get that result without you always having to be the one on in order to get it. And so, having that structured core content can be really helpful for people to be able to move through. One thing I wanted
Yeah.
to know for context as well was if you could maybe just describe like what your program actually looks like. So you have your core content and then you have your group coaching. Like how does that work?
Yeah, so I have the core content, which is built out into 3 different phases. So it like creates more clarity and people actually know where they're working
Mhm.
on, what they're working on. And so I have like foundational material, and then we go into like some more specialty, what I call challenge areas, but more specialty material, targeted tools that they might need, and then additional things that are going to enhance the whole process that they're doing. So it's now broken down into 3 phases. And then, so they can go through that as if it were a course.
Yeah.
But then I also have weekly group coaching calls. I have a community where they can write questions in, and I'll always go in and answer. And I also have like a Friday check-in form that I send out so that if they have a question and maybe they weren't able to make it to a call or something, they can write it in there. It helps them self-assess where they're at and what they're doing. So there's a few questions for them to be able to look at what they're working on, what's going well, what they're struggling with, and then also be able to communicate with me in case they need that place. So I have like 3 different areas they can get support within the program, and then also with the curriculum to go through.
I love that. And then the nice thing about it too is if someone were to join, there could be some people that are already in the program, and then you can have people joining more regularly if you wanted to have more of that regular recurring revenue rather than just having like a cohort and then it ends, correct?
Yeah, mine is a 4-month program when they first come in, and then they can extend afterwards at like an alumni rate, and they can
Hmm.
continue to have the community and keep coming to the calls, which a lot of people want to because of the community aspect and just being in that environment, and connecting with parents. Um, but yes, it's a 4-month program. So they can come in whenever it's like their time and they're going to get their 4 months. But having that program, they're just doing it on their timeline. So it's set up so that like I'm not doing an order of calls. I do on my calls, I'll do like supplemental trainings. If I hear things coming up in the group, then I might do, a 15 or 20-minute training at the start of our call. And then we can still answer any questions that are on their mind and everything. So I love it for a couple reasons. One, I love it for, like you said, the recurring revenue. It's not just like I don't feel this pressure to have to sell it
Hmm.
like on a big launch. I know that people can come in also as they need it. So it's like less pressure for me. Plus, I can help people whenever they might need it or feel that way. Um, so that's helpful. And I also like it for me within the program that some people have been there for a bit. And so they can also support others that maybe are newly coming in and share that. And I know for other people that might not work in the same way, but this is really what it's about, right? Is like designing it to meet your needs and your people's needs. And I find that really helpful that people have maybe been there 2 months. They could say, I remember when I started and this is what I tried or whatever. So they can support each other in that way too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, it's so important for you to set up a program that's really unique to you and the thing that's really like creating it in a way that's going to help your clients, but help you too. And so that really works for you and it works for your personality and your style and just getting clear on like what kind of program you want. Because if you're listening and you feel like, oh, I have to create it like another program I was in, or it has to be just like a group coaching, or it has to be like this, or it has to be like that. It really doesn't. There's so many different things that you can make it so that it's your own and make it really unique to you. But one thing that I was going to highlight about what you said about people who are already in it versus new people, that's one hesitation I find sometimes with my clients, and you might be listening thinking this too, is I think it's easier to wrap our heads around a more linear cohort model where it's like we start all together and then we finish all together. Like having that rolling enrollment can be a little bit harder to wrap your head around. And the thing I would say is it does require a little bit more systems in terms of making sure that your clients are still getting results, how you actually deliver it. Like I call it more of like that delivery system model. But the thing I love about that kind of model, and you have to choose the right one for you, is I always think about it when I used to work in Montessori's. Like I've taught all different grades levels, but I remember working in Montessori at this cute little, very posh preschool in the city. And there were these 3, 4, and 5-year olds. And sometimes I think a hesitation that we have is if people have been in the group longer, won't it be not as useful for them for all these new people to come in? And how do you balance that? But if you can find a way to balance it so that everyone's getting their needs met and they're still able to move through, it can be really beneficial, like that Montessori model where the 5-year-olds help the 3-year-olds. And that's why everyone rises up to the level of the 5-year-old who can move. Like they learn so much more in Montessori than they do in kindergarten. Trust me, I've taught both. Um, and so that's what I really like about what you're doing with adults is because when you've been in the program for a little bit and you're able to teach somebody else, you're actually going to understand it more and deepen your understanding and ability to use that content when you are able to tell somebody else about it or support someone else in there. And then the people coming in feel part of this community. They start to hear different ways of approaching it. So it supports both people who have been in there a little bit longer and the people who are brand new. You just have to do it in a way that's encouraging rather than having people feel like, oh my gosh, everyone's more advanced than me. But yeah, I really like how you do that.
Yeah, it's so funny that you say that because I took my kids to a co-op style preschool that was the same, the 3, 4, and
Nice.
5-year-olds. And I remember at first thinking a little bit like, ooh, they're 3. 5-year-olds seem so much, bigger and older and like, sometimes bully-ish, they're just like bigger and like have more authority in that way. Where like my little 3-year-old. But
Yeah.
actually it worked so well in that way. And so it's funny that you bring that into it because I really learned like that is a great model to help,
Mhm.
everybody grow together. And some people are more leaders than in that setting. And I think it does work well at least inside of my program. And I love how you said it can be different for everyone. And I also think, something that comes up, like sometimes I think about, oh, maybe I want to add this other call or do something more specified over here. Like you can have a core way that the program runs. And then if you find that there's something that needs a little bit more support, you can always add that on or shift the way that you're doing it, but you still have like a core design and a core way that you're doing it. And then you can adjust from there a little bit as you get feedback or notice another need, but you don't have to like up level everything and change everything.
Yes, it can be gradual over time, right? Absolutely. So what do you think since we created that, like the phase 1, 2, and 3 and kind of streamline more of your process rather than approaching it more like you did with the groups and the one-on-ones, what do you think shifted for you in your business from there?
Well, one thing that shifted was it was definitely easier to sell it from like my perspective. I remember even when I was in the process of creating it, it wasn't even fully done. When I was selling it, it was so much easier for me to describe how they would move through it and what they would do. I was able to explain, like, this is what we do first, then this is what we do, and then this is what we do. And these are the results that you're going to get. And this is why we do it. Because now, like, I had even in my mind understood how my program works better versus just like, I don't know, because I can really support you, like, as you come to calls and I have these trainings on these different topics. It was so much easier for me to explain and for people to feel like, oh, like there's a system for this, this is
Mhm.
how it's going to work. I was more confident, I think, in selling it, but also just better to able to articulate it to them so that they felt like, oh, that's how it works. Yeah, that's what I need versus me like kind of stumbling through what we actually do. I knew what we did, but I didn't have clarity on how to explain it in like a cohesive way to somebody.
Yeah. And that I think is so important because sometimes people say, sell the transformation, not the details of your program, right? Which I agree. Absolutely. And some people just want to know, like, what's the final result? Great. Here's my money, right? But then there are other people who want to know a little bit more about the process. And that's when sometimes we get into like, and there are 8 calls and there are 12 lessons and 6 modules and this and that. And people are like, that sounds overwhelming. But if you can say, first in phase 1, we're going to do this and you're going to get this result. And then in phase 2, we're going to do this. And this is how we support you. And then in phase 3, we do this. And if you get stuck, here's how we support you along the way. So it's showing your potential clients like the process rather than just all the deliverables. And deliverables, what I mean by deliverables are like how many calls you have, if there's a Facebook group, things like that. When you can show how it flows together and what result each one is going to give your clients, it's going to be way easier for you to sell it because you're going to feel more confident and your clients are going to have a sense of what to expect as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I was so surprised at what a difference it made when my program wasn't even done yet for me to just be able to articulate it better. I think it's huge. And like you said, I found that some people were just like, oh, this is what I need. And they would buy because they knew, like, I want my kid to have a healthy relationship with food. I'm worried about these things. Great. Like, I'm so glad you're going to support me. It's fine. But some people would ask more questions like, well, how does this actually work? What does it look like? What do we do? And like, they would ask questions and I was trying to articulate it, but I really didn't have a lot of clarity on the way that they would move through it versus just like, well, these are the topics that we cover. I wasn't really able to explain it in a more cohesive way.
Yeah, because I think one of the pieces that we don't always touch on or that we don't always hear in marketing is that people buy for different reasons and people have different buying styles. Some people just want to know the result and don't like a lot of details, which is funny because I've learned that I am not that kind of buyer. I like to have more details. And I realized if you overwhelm people with details, if you're listening, that could be too much for some people, right? But if you don't add the right kinds of details or answer some people's questions, some people want to have more information or they have more hesitation. And so when you can give kind of like an accordion, like some people just need like simple, here's the result, this is what we're going to do. And then some people need like the accordion stretched out, like they need a little bit more information about what you're going to do. So when you have that process that you can count on, you can say, this is how our system works.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm like that too. Like I found myself too. I want to know the details. I want to know a lot of details about it to really decide, like, is this the right fit for me? And I want to be able to support other people in knowing if it's the right fit for them. I get that. So I really want people to feel confident when they're going in to purchase and to work with me.
And what would you say, Nicole, if someone's listening and they're thinking like, okay, I'd like to make sure that I'm getting more results in my program and I'm worried I'm not going to get results. What's one thing that you've started doing? Do you think maybe that we've done together or that you've implemented on your own that helps you know that you're getting your clients' results?
So I think a couple things. So one is that I do have that feedback form where I can be able to look at like, where did they start and what are they saying is like going well or not well, because I have them rate like, how are things feeling this week? And so we can look back and compare every week that they fill it out, like where did they start? Where are they at now? So I think that's really helpful that I'm able to actually get that feedback. I also have them do like a welcome assessment when they first come in. So that's really helpful. I will also just throw in that's really helpful for me to get language of my actual clients too. So it helps me be like, oh, who are the people that actually buy my program? What is it that they really need? So that's also helpful from like that marketing perspective, but I know we're also talking about getting client results, right? Like we can really see like, what is it that they need? So that's helpful for me if I can look at their assessment and say like, where are their top struggles? I can see that. So I think that, and then that I have multiple layers of support, and so I always say like people can use my program in whatever way best fits them. It's flexible that if they don't really want to come to calls, they don't have to, but they could still fill out the feedback form if they come up on a question, or if they just want to drop into a call when they do have a question, they can do that. If they're the type of people that don't love going through course material, if they just want to come to all the calls, and then when I say, hey, I think it would be useful to go watch this video, they can do that. Like it really can meet people where they're at for their learning styles, the type of support they want. So I think that's been really helpful is to like think about designing it from, again, the place that's going to get people results and also that works for me.
I love that. And I love that you thought about how different people can use it, right? Because when you have that core content, you can direct people and say, hey, check this one out. This might be helpful for you. Some people will want to go through it and they don't have to come to calls if that's an objection for them. And then for people who just want to come to calls, you have that too. So it really offers different options for people. And I think that's when you think about objections, or reasons that someone might want to join your program but might think, oh, what if it doesn't work for me? You have all these different suggestions of saying like, you can do it this way, you can do it that way. And I know it's still going to work for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I work with parents, right? And a lot of them are concerned about the time commitment or whatever it might be. And so I'm like, you get to do it on your own time if you want, or just come for as much as you need, right? Like everyone has different schedules and different, time allowances. And so I think it can really meet different people in different ways. And now that I have that core curriculum, I feel so much more confident saying you don't have to come to calls to get results, or you can just fill out the form to get your question answered. Like I'm able to support them. And if someone really can't make calls, but they do need that additional support, I will let's say record a video on a call I think I need to talk through a little bit more and then send it to them. Like there are different ways that I don't have to be doing that for every person so it doesn't bog me down. But I can still adjust a little bit if I can see that this would be helpful for somebody. So it's like I have the whole system there, but then I can put in whatever little higher touch or manual things, but I'm not like scattered trying to do it because there's something mainstream happening all the time.
That is one of the reasons that for me, having that signature process is so important, because in terms of when you think of percentages, like I would say about 60% of the average, like just say an average buyer or an average client, they're going to just need 60% of what the regular instruction is or what you regularly offer. And then there might be a 30% who might need a little bit more additional support, and then 10% who need like considerably more to be able to get the result. If you don't have that signature process in place, you're going to feel so much more scattered because you're trying to meet everybody's needs. But if you have that signature process in place that's going to support 60%, then you have that freedom, like a little bit more space in your schedule to help the people who might need a little bit extra from you rather than having to do it for everybody.
That makes so much sense. Yeah. I mean, you always think in these, right? This is what you're so good at is like, you think in these terms of how that actually works, where I'm just like, I don't know what kind of works for me because I do it this way. And you can really articulate that so well, which is why you're so great at helping people design their programs. I always felt like working with you, I could like spit all of this stuff out and you're like, okay, so what I'm seeing is that this is what you want to do and this is how we need to do it. Like you're really good at organizing things when I just like throw a bunch at you. So that's.
Oh, I'm so glad. Yeah. And it's really, once you know how to create and like kind of streamline your information, it's like, I don't have to have the expertise in your area to be able to help you organize your ideas, because it's really a process, like a step-by-step process to understand how to create your program in a way that gets results. So you could take the same kind of strategy and bring it to another program if you needed to. One thing that I wanted to ask you before we finish up is one thing you mentioned was about kind of, I think, reacting to your day, I think is the term you used at the beginning, versus feeling like you had more space. So if you're listening, I always like to think about like, if you feel like, you're maxed out with everything that you're doing, what's maybe one thing that we did together that really you found helpful to feel less reactive and like you had more space in your day?
I think there's multiple things, but one thing that you had me do was to track my time. And that was really helpful because it just made me even pause to say, like, do I actually want to like just react and do this right now? Because I felt like I was constantly in that energy of feeling like I needed to. So when I was tracking my time, it would make me pause and think, is that something I actually have to do right now? Or can I put that in a bucket of things to like handle later so that my energy isn't going a million different ways all the time? So I'm not actually getting something impactful done. So tracking my time was huge, not just to look at it later, but actually to like help me in the moment decide what I really wanted to be focused on and working on. So just it was like this built-in kind of accountability that happened that was really helpful. But then we did so many things, Lauren. I'm like, what do I say that we did? We did so many things. Like we also really took things off my plate that maybe didn't need to be done and put like some automation around some things. I handed off additional things to my VA. We systematized my social media so that I could get it done way quicker because of the way that we planned out my weeks for doing it. So there were just like so many different levels that we organized.
But one thing I would say, about the tracking your time, I've had clients who are reluctant because who wants to track your time? It can feel tedious. But the reason that it works is because it's habit formation or habit formation strategy, sorry, that is monitoring. So it's basically monitoring what you're doing. So it's like it's almost like you're seeing what you're doing at another level. So it's like there's you doing it, and then there's you objectively looking at how you're spending your time. And when you can see it objectively like that, it can really help you use your time in the way that you want to, rather than feeling like you're responding to other people's priorities. Like you can be more intentional. So I love that you pointed that out.
Yes, thank you.
And speaking of your Instagram, you should absolutely, if you are a parent, absolutely follow Nicole on Instagram, because she has fantastic content for parents around eating and that healthy relationship with food. So where can the listeners go to find you if they want to find out more about what you do, Nicole?
Thank you. Yes, that is a great place to find me. I am on Instagram at Nicole Cruz RD. I'm pretty active there, so feel free to go look through some things. And if anything resonates, please send me a DM. I love connecting with people. So that's a great place to reach me.
Fantastic. Well, thanks so much for coming on the podcast this week, Nicole. Is there anything that you would add to call this episode complete?
I mean, I would just say that, Lauren, you're so brilliant at what you do. And I know you're not asking for me to give you tons of kudos, but you always amaze me with the way that you can help bring me back to what's really important and to really focus in on that. And so if anyone is considering starting a signature program, or maybe you've been working on one and you feel like you're kind of disorganized, Lauren actually helps in so many different ways. Yes, inside of your signature program, but creating systems that really feel good for you, that get your clients results and work for you. So I just want to say you've been so much help to me, and I wouldn't be in the space of feeling like I have more clarity and I can really work on the things that I want and keep work within my work hours and be there with my kids if it wasn't for all the work we did together. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. It was lovely. Yeah, lovely working with you. And I appreciate you saying that.
Absolutely.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for listening to another episode of Enlighten and Inspire. We will link up Nicole's work and her Instagram on our show notes. And if you would like to hear more about how we can help you create your signature program, or even refine the one you already have, I have an upcoming workshop that is going to show you how to do just that. And I will link it up in the show notes as well. So make sure to check that out and take a look at Nicole's Instagram. And I'll see you on next week's episode.